Needs now, said no one ever, is something to make the region's politics more complicated. America's president seems to have missed the memo. This evening, Donald Trump confirmed a campaign pledge, the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, a symbolic statement fraught with practical implications. In a tightly scripted address, he said he would build the US embassy in that city, insisting he was acting in the pursuit of peace between Israel and the Palestinians, and that the US supported a two-state solution if agreed by both sides. He was warmly thanked by Israel's Prime Minister, fury from many on the other side. Tonight we ask those right around the region what the ramifications of this move are likely to be. But we start with this report by Gabriel Gatehouse.
Jerusalem is many things to many people. A place that embodies the shared heritage of the world's great monotheistic civilizations, and a city whose ancient walls have long been an incubator for their festering divisions. Today, Donald Trump walked into this most treacherous of minefields and pledged to shake things up.
When I came into office, I promised to look at the world's challenges with open eyes and very fresh thinking. We cannot solve our problems by making the same failed assumptions and repeating the same failed strategies of the past.
His announcement was anticipated with foreboding in the Middle East, but there were hints that he might be aiming at an audience closer to home.
Therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. While previous presidents have made this a major campaign promise, they failed to deliver. Today, I am delivering.
If Donald Trump's motivation was born in part out of a desire to deliver on the pledges of 2016, then the ramifications of this announcement reach much further back in history. In 1948, when the Jewish state was born, Israel proclaimed Jerusalem its capital. But on the ground, the city was divided into western and eastern sectors. Israel controlled the west. Jordan administered the largely Palestinian east, including the Old City. Then came the War of 1967. In 6 days, the same time it took the God of the Old Testament to create the world, Israel redrew the map of the Middle East. The shape of the current conflict has its roots in that historical moment. Israel seized the eastern part of the city and expanded the city limits. Under international law, East Jerusalem is occupied territory, and the Palestinians want to see it become the capital of a future independent state. Today's announcement has, in fact, been a long time coming. In 1995, Congress passed an act requiring the US government to move its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Since then, every 6 months, every president has deferred that move on the grounds of national security. Today, President Obama's successor promised to put an end to that.
This is nothing more or less than a recognition of reality. It is also the right thing to do. It's something that has to be done.
And with that, at a stroke, many diplomats fear that America's crucial role as a peace broker has been fatally undermined.
Much of the statement will leave a sense of a vacancy. And I think others in Europe and across the Arab world will now wonder where this process goes next and whether America, particularly under President Trump, is really committed to a genuine, fair two-state solution.
Donald Trump said America was.
The United States would support a two-state solution if agreed to by both sides.
I think there was evidence that some of those diplomats who've been trying to reduce the negative impact of this announcement did get to work on that text.
There was some reassurance for the Palestinians who want a return to pre-1967 borders.
We are not taking a position of any final status issues, including the specific boundaries of the Israeli sovereignty in Jerusalem or the resolution of contested borders.
But it doesn't really negate what is still a very dangerous announcement at a very delicate time for the Middle East. And I think that the sad thing is that many of those extremists across the region will be the ones who are celebrating this in the morning.
Donald Trump has sent his young son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to the Middle East in search of what he calls the ultimate deal.
We want an agreement that is a great deal for the Israelis and a great deal for the Palestinians.
I would be the first one to celebrate if there is a superbly crafted strategy behind this announcement, but I won't be holding my breath. We hear a lot about Donald Trump being a great deal maker, and certainly in his book he says you've got to hold back many of the strongest cards you have. It looks as though he's played one of those cards a little too early.
That was Gabriel Gatehouse. Now, in a moment, we'll hear from the Israeli ambassador, Mark Regev, and the Palestinian academic, Ghada Kami, although we're not expecting to resolve the region's issues here in the Newsnight studio tonight, so they won't be debating head-to-head. Let's go first to our diplomatic editor, Mark Urban, who's here. What surprised you most about Trump's announcement, Mark?
Well, I think given that there was the nod towards the two-state solution and the statement by the president that it wasn't intended, today's move, to prejudice the final status issues, he could have acknowledged the Palestinian aspiration to have their capital in East Jerusalem. It could have been something he'd done. I mean, it's many years since the diplomatic game was about, say, an international solution for Jerusalem, a sort of zone to be ruled by the international community, that sort of thing. For decades now, it's been about the two-state solution. And everybody who's worked that problem, every diplomat I've spoken to for 30 years on this, knows that a Palestinian state without its capital in East Jerusalem is not a viable solution to the conflict.
What do you make of those internationally showing support for this move?
Well, there have been one or two, interestingly, and going back to that point, the Czech Republic, for example, which said today that it would follow the American lead and move its embassy to Jerusalem, did also mention the Palestinian aspiration for a capital in East Jerusalem. The Philippines has also followed suit, but obviously, by and large, the reaction has been negative. The UK has said it won't be moving its embassy. Many other European countries taking a similar tone. We'll see if some others join in with the Czech Republic and the Philippines in the coming days.
Mark, thanks very much. Let's pick up with our guest, Ghada Kami. I'm going to start with you. Thanks for coming in. Donald Trump is right, isn't he, when he says the old way is broken and there is no point in repeating the exact same formula. You have to reach out to new solutions.
No, he's not right. He doesn't know anything about it. I tell you what the Middle East doesn't really need right now is a know-nothing American president like Donald Trump. And the reality is that the American president has endorsed an illegal situation. Israel is in illegal occupation of East Jerusalem, Arab Jerusalem, and its sovereignty over West Jerusalem is not recognized by the international community. That is a legal fact. Now, Donald Trump has chosen to violate international law by endorsing something very illegal, which is Israeli control, sovereignty over Jerusalem, calling itself the capital, this kind of thing. This is very, very bad.
When he says he is deeply committed to peace, when he says this is nothing more than a recognition of reality, do you not have faith that this is the first step of what could be a solution?
No, of course not. First of all, it does not acknowledge that the Palestinians have any rights. I notice your commentator, Mark Urban, talking about aspiration. Palestinians have a right to the city. I was born in Jerusalem. I'm part of the indigenous people of Jerusalem. I'm a native of Jerusalem. I have rights. I don't have aspirations. And the fact that the President of the United States can't even bring himself to mention the Palestinian rights in that city is appalling. And that's the first problem. And of course, the second problem is we know that Donald Trump is not a free agent. He is surrounded by pro-Israel advisors, pro-Israel officials.
To be fair, the American stance towards Israel has not differed particularly from one president to another.
No, because it's always been dictated by Israeli interests.
So what are you saying, that he cannot broker peace, or America cannot broker peace in the region?
No, of course not. He can't. He's compromised. He is surrounded by pro-Israel propagandists, people who want Israel's interest above any other. He cannot operate as a free agent, even if he had the wit to do it.
God, I want to talk about the practicalities now, because he has said he's calling on both sides to respect the status quo. How should Mahmoud Abbas respond? How should young Palestinian men respond if they feel upset by what they've heard tonight? Should they legitimately protest, or should they work towards this two-state solution that he talked about?
Yeah, listen, there's no two-state solution possible. If Jerusalem has gone out of the equation, so we can forget about that. Please, let's discuss it. Now, when you say how they should, I don't know how they should, but I know how they feel. They will protest, they are angry, and they have every right to be angry. What is so dangerous about this? Because it's not even... Look, it's bad enough it's illegal. It's bad enough that Trump is influenced by all kinds of...
But I'm talking about the practicalities. At this point, do the moderates just give up and say, we can't even envisage a two-state solution?
Listen. It's not about moderates. It's not about extremes. Please let me be clear. This is about a people, a whole people who have rights in that city. Of course they're angry. Of course they will protest. Nobody should be surprised. Why I think this is so dangerous, apart from the fact it's absolutely misguided, why it is so dangerous is because, you know, one of the first things that might happen, and watch for this, is that Israel will be emboldened to take over the Islamic holy places. Okay. It's had its eye on the Aqsa Mosque for a long time. And if they take it over now with lots of new self-confidence, watch what happens.
Let me put some of those points now to Mark Regev. Thank you very much indeed. Ambassador, it's hard to think of a more provocative way to hunt for peace in the Middle East than this statement. It is a joke, isn't it?
I beg to disagree, Emily. I think this was a just move and a good move for peace. It's a just move because there's an international norm that everyone respects.
Norm?
A norm.
The EU doesn't. The Pope doesn't. The UN doesn't.
Allow me to make my point, Emily. There's a norm that it's respected every country's right to choose their capital. That's a sovereign right of every country on the planet. And there are countries, as you know, Emily, who have changed their capital cities. Turkey changed its capital city, China changed its capital city, and even
how
Germany.
Provocative this move is.
But
Every bit of symbolism
why are we
counts.
denied the right? Why are we denied the right to choose our own capital city, a right that every country on this planet has?
So you can call it what you want, the Palestinians can call it what they want. My question to you is, from what you have seen so far of Donald Trump, what is it that makes you think he is a classy peace broker? What is it that makes you think he's committed to solving the world's crisis, that he has a firm grip on international relations? Do you really want to tie your country's future to him as a peace broker?
I would urge you to look at this decision on the substance, and the substance is positive.
The substance is that he is saying he's committed to a two-state solution, to a peace process, and he's done that by deeply offending and inflaming relations in that part of the world.
Let's stop for a moment. The Palestinians and the Arab world officially say that they recognize Israel within the 1967 boundaries. And so we all know that Jerusalem has been the capital of Israel since 1949. So why is there a problem with recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital? All the issues of borders can be negotiated.
It's extraordinary that you are putting that question to me. You know this area. You know the complexities inside out. You have a responsibility, don't you, to tell him he's wrong. Didn't you think it would be more important to not look at the short-term gains and to get the longer-term peace process right?
We all have a responsibility to get it right. And what is the fact? The fact is the Israeli government sits in Jerusalem, our executive is there, our Supreme Court is there, our parliament is there. When foreign leaders choose to meet with Israeli leaders, they come to Jerusalem. When foreign diplomats meet with their Israeli counterparts, they come to Jerusalem.
You're parroting
to
his
ignore
lines without
this.
acknowledging quite how much offence it has caused to Palestinian residents. Now, you heard what Geet just said. She said it will embolden Israelis to forget the two-state solution, to forget the sanctity of the Mosque of Al-Aqsa and all the rest of it, because this is where you think now that Israel can claim whatever it wants. You have the acceptance of the
My Prime Minister
President.
said just 2 hours ago, he said that we will maintain the holy sites and continue to keep the status quo, and the religious rights of all peoples will be protected.
You need to do more than that, don't you? It's not just about religious freedoms. It's about respecting people who call that their home and who assert their claim to it. So my question to you is, what is the olive branch now that Israel, the Israeli government, has to offer to Palestinians to recognise that this is something that they do not consider fair?
Let's be clear what's fair.
Or legal.
You cannot, and legal. You could not have peace without Jerusalem being Israel's capital. And those on the Palestinian side who have these dangerous fantasies that somehow we're going to throw all the Jews out of Jerusalem, that is a non-starter. And if President Trump today has drawn a line in the sand and said it's time for the Palestinians to recognize that the Jewish people have national rights in Jerusalem, that we have a right to our own capital city, that is a positive mood. It's just, and it's good for peace.
Mark Regger, thank you very much indeed. We're going to pick up on those thoughts with two more key players. Congressman Lee Zeldin is a Republican member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee in the US and co-chairman of the House Republican Israel Caucus. İlnur Çevik is chief advisor to the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Very nice to have you here. Let me start with you, İlnur Çevik. The onus, according to Ambassador Regev, is now on the Palestinians to accept this recognition, to move on peace. What do you say to that?
Well, it takes two to dance. And if you do not recognize the Palestinian rights, if you do not extend an olive branch to the Palestinians, what can you ask from them? What can you expect from them? It's a very hard thing to turn to these people and say, Jerusalem is the capital, finished. Now, if they had said, fine, West Jerusalem, we have declared the capital of Israel, and the Palestinians have a right for East Jerusalem to be their capital.
So as a key player in the region, what does Turkey do now? How do you face this new reality?
Well, Turkey is frustrated, deeply frustrated, because Turkey feels that while it wants to maintain relations with Israel for the sake of the Palestinians, it is becoming harder and harder for Turkey to maintain a kind of plausible relationship with Israel. The Turkish president has already said we may even sever ties.
You think that will happen now?
Turkey may downgrade its relations, I don't know. It depends on how the situation develops.
Would you be as bold with your relations with the US now?
Well, Turkey is not going. Turkey has already announced that it rejects the US decision. The Turkish parliament, for the first time, all the parties have come together, the Kurds, the left wing, everybody. For the first time in nearly 10 years, they've come together to denounce the American decision. And this shows it's not only Recep Tayyip Erdogan, but it's across the board, all parties who are usually against the Turkish government, the opposition, have come together to reject this decision.
You heard the voice in our film earlier saying this is a victory for extremists
Yes.
who can ride roughshod over moderate views now and say, you know, we have to respond to this in the only way that we see fit. So what do you have to do as a key player in the region to make sure it doesn't inflame? I mean, by severing relations, you're ducking out, right?
Well, yes. This is, the Turkish president has said, this is one of the options. He didn't say it's going to happen.
No, but I'm just asking, you know, you're his chief advisor. What will you be advising him tonight?
Well, our advice, of course, would be that we need a kind of leverage on Israel.
Yeah.
Some form of leverage is needed there. However, the Palestinians have a right. And when you do not answer to the demands of moderate Palestinians who want peace, who want just their rights, who want Jerusalem, who have been born in Jerusalem, to say this is my home, if they are denied those rights, then we're all playing into the hands of the radicals.
OK. Ilna Čević, thank you very much, and thank
you
you for coming in. Let's pick up now with Lee Zeldin, a Republican member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Thanks for joining us. You've got the Pope against you, the UN, the EU, most countries except, I think it was the Philippines and the Czech Republic. Have you got any qualms about what your president's done tonight?
I strongly support the president's decision. It is a fact that the capital of Israel is Jerusalem. This is where the Israeli Knesset is located, the offices and homes of the Israeli Prime Minister and President, where the Supreme Court is located. We really need to all be honest with each other that the fact is that the capital of Israel is Jerusalem.
Well, the geographical niceties seem to overlook what a precarious political position this has put Israel and the Palestinians in this evening.
Well, I would say what really complicates things the most is when you have Palestinian terrorists murdering innocent Israelis. And just yesterday, the House of Representatives passed the Taylor Force Act. Taylor Force was a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point, an Army veteran who was brutally murdered by a Palestinian terrorist.
And you think this will help?
I would say that Palestinian... I think that that is a huge issue that needs to get addressed, because on one side, you have a party trying to promote peace, and on the other side, you're treating terrorists as martyrs and heads of state and financially rewarding terrorism. So
you have a president, clearly, who tries to ban Muslims from certain countries even coming into the US. Do you think he is the right man to broker peace in Israel, in the Middle East?
Well, peace is going to be negotiated on the ground. Regardless of whoever the American president is at any time, it's going to be important that whoever is in charge of Israel, whoever's in charge of the Palestinian Authority, they have the ability between the two of them to be able to negotiate a long-term peace, one that over the course of generations, not just years and decades at this point, but generations has been elusive. Well, but I don't know of any single person outside of Israel and that region capable of doing this for them. It really needs to be done on the ground.
Right, so maybe he should have stayed out of it. Our Palestinian guest just called President Trump a know-nothing American.
Well, again, the capital of Israel is Jerusalem. I'm not questioning that the Palestinian Authority is headquartered in Ramallah. I've been to Ramallah. I met with the Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority. I don't question that that's where their offices are located. That's where they are headquartered at. So, there are certain realities here that, and Prime Minister Hamdallah said in no uncertain terms to my face that he will not recognize Israel as a Jewish state. So there are certain aspects here that you also have to consider the fact that if the Palestinian Authority leadership was in good faith negotiating a deal at some point, let's say people are sitting down in 2018, is that there's an element within the Palestinian Authority that will not rest. Hamas won't rest unless Israel's wiped off the map.
Lee Zeldin, we've run out of time, but we appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much indeed.